The knock came at 8:43 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday. 2 officers. 1 question. Are you aware of the allegations your family has made against you? Allegations? I laughed. I thought it was a joke. Until they said my nephew's name. The boy I helped raise. The one who used to call me a safe place. They said I hurt him. That I was the monster. That I'd betrayed him. But I knew better. I knew what trauma looked like. I saw the fear behind his eyes, the way he froze around certain people, the way his stories kept shifting. And I knew this wasn't about justice. It was about deflection. Because the person who did hurt him was still in the house. Still sitting at the dinner table. Still pretending. So if they wanted a witch hunt, they got one. But I was never the witch. I was the one with matches. And I wasn't going to stop until the real abuser was dragged into the light, even if I had to burn every family tie to do it. It started with rain. The kind that tapped against the windows like fingers, persistent and cold. I was in the kitchen making coffee, barefoot, still in my robe, when the knock came, sharp, too early, too serious. It didn't sound like a neighbor. It didn't sound like Amazon. It sounded like trouble. I opened the door and there they were. 2 cops. Not in riot gear. Not hostile. Just serious, too serious. Are you, name? One asked. I nodded, heart already starting to thud. We're here about your nephew. That sentence rewired my entire nervous system. I dropped the mug, it shattered on the floor, coffee spreading like a bruise. Is he okay? I asked, already stepping forward, ready to grab my keys, my coat, anything. But they didn't nod. They didn't move. Instead, one pulled out a notepad. Are you aware of the allegations your family has made against you? That's when the world stopped turning. Allegations? I blinked. What are you talking about? What allegations? The next 5 minutes came in snapshots. Them asking if I was willing to come down to the station for questioning. Me, stammering, still barefoot, still wet from the coffee on the floor. The word abuse said out loud. My nephew's name attached to it. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd, so out of body, that laughter was all I had. You think I hurt him? I said, eyes wide, heart racing. Is this a prank? No, this isn't real. But it was. They weren't arresting me. Not yet, they said. Just asking questions. Following up. Standard procedure. They left with nothing. No confession. No evidence. Because there was nothing to give. But I was left with everything. 1,000 questions. A rotting pit of panic in my gut. And the beginning of the end. I called my sister, my nephew's mom, 20 times. She didn't answer. And when I texted her, all I got was, do not contact me. It was like waking up in an alternate universe. The people who used to love me, or said they did, had flipped a switch overnight. But here's what no one else knew. I knew my nephew. I knew his patterns. His fears. The way he looked at certain adults when he didn't know anyone was watching. I knew the nightmares he had, the kind that didn't match anything a child his age should have seen. I knew how his behavior changed after visits to one particular family member. And I knew what he told me once, on a sleepy car ride home after soccer practice, when his voice was a whisper and he wouldn't meet my eyes. He tells me not to say anything. That it's a secret. He never said who. Never said what, and I didn't push, because I didn't want to scare him. Because I wasn't ready for what I already suspected. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, someone else in the family would notice too. Say something. Do something. But no one did. And now? Now they were saying I was the danger. Because pointing at me meant they didn't have to look any deeper. Didn't have to confront the man behind the curtain. And that man, the real abuser, was still out there. Still at family dinners. Still smiling in photos. Still touching my nephew. So no. I wasn't going to stay silent. They chose the wrong scapegoat. And now? Now I was going to become their worst nightmare. Because I wasn't just going to clear my name. I was going to rip the mask off the real monster. And when I did, they would all have to watch. There's a moment, a single, frozen moment, when a lie gets told about you, and you know everything will be different forever. It wasn't said to my face. I found out the details the way you always do when your own family betrays you, secondhand, whispered, and through the kind of silence that tells you too much. After the cops left that morning, I made calls. Desperate, frantic, fingers shaking against my screen. First to my sister. Then my brother-in-law. Then my mother. My father. Nobody picked up. Except my cousin Elise. She hesitated before saying anything. Her voice was low, careful, like she was afraid the phone was being tapped. You haven't heard everything, have you? Elise, I said, what's going on?
They're saying I couldn't even say the word.
I couldn't breathe around it. Please. Tell me what's happening. She sighed. They're saying you touched him. Silence. My ears rang. What? They said he told someone at school. That it started after he spent the weekend at your place last fall. That weekend. I remember that weekend. I remember building a blanket fort in my living room, eating frozen pizza, watching movies. I remember how he clung to me when it was time to go. I remember how he cried in the car, begging not to go back to their house. How he said, I wish I could stay with you forever. And now they were saying that weekend, was when I heard him? That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was an execution. I would never, I started, but she cut me off. I know, Elise said quickly. I know. Look, I don't believe it. But it's everywhere now. They've told everyone. My mom. My dad. Aunt Lisa. People are cutting you off. Cutting me off? Are you kidding me? No, she said softly. It's already done. And just like that, my world collapsed. Not just socially, legally, professionally, emotionally. My job suspended me within 48 hours of the report being filed. I got an email with the subject line pending investigation, administrative leave. No context. No humanity. Just fear. Because all it takes is an accusation. Not proof. Not logic. Just fear. My friends stopped replying. My neighbors, who used to smile and wave, started avoiding eye contact. I saw one of them physically pull her child away from me outside the mailbox. And I hadn't even been charged. I was just accused. And that was enough to destroy me. For a week, I didn't sleep. I barely ate. I sat in the dark refreshing articles, group chats, posts. I wanted to scream, to set the record straight, to blast the truth from every rooftop, but I knew how that would look. They'd say I was panicking. They'd say guilt makes people defensive. They'd say, if she was innocent, she wouldn't be acting like this. Because once someone paints you as a predator, there's no clean way to scrub it off. Even innocence stains. But underneath the panic, a deeper fire started to burn. Because I knew why they were doing this. I knew where this started. It wasn't about me. It was about hiding him. The real one. The one who had always made my skin crawl. The one whose hands lingered too long on my back when he hugged me. The one whose jokes about teenage girls were always just jokes, even when nobody was laughing. My uncle. My sister's father-in-law. The one no one ever questioned. The one they all loved too much to look at too closely. And now, instead of asking hard questions, they chose the easy villain, me. The one who noticed. The one who asked questions. The one who believed my nephew's fear. So they buried me in a lie. To protect their comfort. Their reputation. Their monster. And in doing so, they made the worst mistake of their lives. Because I'd lost everything now. Which meant I had nothing left to lose. And that made me dangerous. I used to think I understood silence. The kind that stretches in a room after a fight. The kind that clings to your skin after someone dies. The kind that falls between two people when there's something too painful to say. But my nephew taught me what silence really meant. His name is Jacob. 8 years old. Brown curls, thoughtful eyes, quieter than most kids but with a laugh that could split the sky when he let it out. I used to be able to make him laugh like that. Now I wasn't even allowed to see him. After the accusation, my access to him was shut down immediately. No contact. No visits. No calls. His school was alerted. CPS opened a file. Everyone went into damage control mode. No one bothered to ask him what he wanted. Or if he was even safe. Because here's the truth no one wanted to hear. He wasn't lying. He just wasn't talking about me. I remembered the signs. How he used to flinch when someone touched the back of his neck. How he went mute for 2 full days after visiting his grandparents. How once, after I asked if everything was okay at home, he stared at me for a long time before whispering, "You can't tell." "Tell what?" I asked. He didn't answer. That moment lived in the back of my mind for months. I thought I was being paranoid. Thought maybe I was projecting. I didn't want to believe what my gut already knew. But kids don't just make up trauma. And they don't weaponize it out of nowhere. Especially not against the people who made them feel safe. So when I got cut off from him, I did what I had to. I hired a lawyer. Not a flashy one, I couldn't afford that anymore. But someone who believed me. Who read every CPS report, every police document, and said, none of this adds up. I started tracing timelines. Looking for inconsistencies. That weekend Jacob had stayed with me? He hadn't wanted to go back to his house. He cried. He said his stomach hurt. I thought it was just separation anxiety. Now I saw it for what it was, a child begging not to return to where the hurt was. I reached out to a family friend, Ms. Thompson, who used to babysit Jacob sometimes. She was older, church-going, cautious. But when I asked her if she'd ever noticed anything strange, she hesitated. That boy startles easy, she said. Especially when your sister's father-in-law picks him up. He used to hide behind the couch when that man came over. My stomach turned. What did you do? I asked. She looked down. I told your sister. She said it was just a phase. I started piecing it together. The family gatherings where Jacob would suddenly disappear, only to be found in a closet, rocking, sucking on his thumb. The sudden behavioral issues the school had flagged, the night terrors. The bedwetting that had come back out of nowhere. None of it pointed to me. But they didn't care. Because pointing the finger at me meant they didn't have to ask themselves the hard questions. Meant they didn't have to confront the possibility that they'd allowed him, the real abuser, to stay close. One day, after my lawyer filed a motion for access to certain family communications, I received a Dropbox link with copies of group chats I wasn't in anymore. And that's when I saw it. A message from my sister. We can't afford a scandal. Not with Dad on probation and the board watching. This has to stay controlled. And another, from my mother. Better one person suffers than the whole family goes down. She'll be fine. She's always been strong. They knew. They knew and they chose silence. But Jacob? He didn't have that choice. He had to live in that house. Eat dinner next to his abuser. Go to school while carrying the weight of a secret he didn't have the words to explain. And that wrecked me more than anything they said about me. Because if I couldn't protect him, then what the hell had all my survival been for? So I stopped playing defense. I stopped worrying about how I looked. I stopped trying to convince anyone of anything. And I focused on the only thing that mattered. Finding a way to give Jacob his voice back. Even if I had to scream until someone heard us both. There's a reason families don't talk about certain things. Not because they don't know. But because they do. And knowing means confronting the rot. The history. The truth they've painted over so many times it's hard to tell where the cracks even start. I was about to find out where mine started. It began with a box. One that had been sitting in my closet for years. Full of old journals, photos, letters, the kind of emotional hoarding you do without realizing it. I hadn't touched it since I moved into this apartment. But now, in the wreckage of everything they were accusing me of, I felt pulled to it. And somewhere near the bottom, wrapped in an old scarf, I found it. A letter. From me. To me. Dated 15 years ago. I didn't remember writing it, not at first. But the handwriting was mine. The voice? That was unmistakable. Dear me. If you're reading this, you probably finally remembered something you tried really hard to forget. My hands shook. You're not crazy. You didn't imagine it. It happened. And they never protected you. The memories came back like a flood I'd held behind a dam for too long. I was 10. My uncle was 27. I was at his house for a sleepover. He gave me candy. Let me stay up late. Watched cartoons with me on the couch. And then, blank. Followed by nausea. Dread. A smell I couldn't describe but could never forget. And his voice, too cheerful, don't tell your mom, okay? It'll scare her. I never told. Until I wrote that letter, apparently in college, during a short-lived attempt at therapy I bailed on after 3 sessions. I'd buried it. Like everything else. But now? Now I had a piece of the truth. My truth. And it connected everything. This man, the one I'd always avoided at family reunions. The one whose gaze made me feel like I was wearing too little, even in winter. The one who Jacob hid from. He'd been doing this for decades. And the family? They'd let him. Not because they didn't believe the signs, but because the consequences of believing were too inconvenient. So they chose silence. Again. And again. And again. Even after my letter, even after the babysitter's warning, even after Jacob's behavior, they still circled the wagons. Because protecting their name was more important than protecting their child. When I told my lawyer about the letter, she froze. "Will you testify?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Yes. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I contacted CPS. Again. This time, not to defend myself, but to report him. I gave them everything: my statement, the letter, the behavioral patterns I'd documented in Jacob, the names of people who had noticed similar things but said nothing. And for the first time, they listened. Because I wasn't the only one. Turns out, another report had been filed. Not by me. Not by anyone in the immediate family. But by a teacher. A guidance counselor at Jacob's school who noticed the way he shrank when older men got too close. That's when things started to shift. An investigation reopened. Interviews scheduled. Questions asked. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because I knew how families like mine work, how they bury things under charm, under prayer, under the lie that we take care of our own. So I started digging. I went back to old photos. Reached out to cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. One of them, Rebecca, answered a message I'd almost deleted. She sent me a voice note. And when I played it, I had to sit down. "He did it to me too," she said, voice trembling. "I was 13. I told my mom. She slapped me and said I was trying to ruin a good man's life. I've never told anyone since." I cried. Not just for her. For all of us. For the kids we were. For the silence we endured. For the truth we buried so deep we nearly forgot it existed. But now it was unearthed. All of it. And I knew what I had to do next. Not just for Jacob. Not just for Rebecca. But for the little girl who wrote that letter. Because no one protected her. But I would protect him. Even if it meant burning every bridge left, he always had that smile. The one that made people trust him, too wide, too practiced. Like he was selling you something, even when he was just saying hello. He wore it at every family gathering, every wedding, every Sunday brunch where he'd bring a bottle of wine and a story about how things were simpler back in the day. My uncle, Michael. My sister's father-in-law. The man who'd been standing in plain sight for decades. And no one questioned him. Because monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like family. Sometimes they bring dessert. After I filed the report and gave my statement, I started preparing for war. Because if I knew one thing, it was this: Michael didn't act alone. Oh, he committed the crimes alone, sure. But the cover-up? That had always been a family affair. They knew. Or at least, they chose not to know, which might be worse. The next time I saw Michael was at my mother's house. Unannounced. I had come to pick up a few childhood items she'd told me to collect before she donated them. Old yearbooks, maybe. A box of trinkets. I hadn't expected him. He was sitting in the living room like he owned the place. Calm. Too calm. "Look who decided to show up," he said, like we were playing a game. I froze. "Don't worry," he added, standing slowly. "I already told your mom to give you some space. She's not here. Just us." My body tensed like it used to when I was a kid. But this time, I didn't back away. This time, I watched him. The way he moved, slow, deliberate. The way his eyes scanned me, not with concern, but with calculation. "You've caused a lot of trouble," he said. "Dragged this family through the mud. Hurt a lot of people." I took a step closer. "So did you," I said. "Except you used your hands." His smile faltered. Only for a second. But it was enough. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he said, voice dropping. "You think they're going to believe you? You've always been the unstable one. Always so emotional. So needy." There it was. The gaslight, flickering. I didn't blink. "I have your voice on tape." It wasn't true. Not yet. But it didn't need to be. His face changed. Just a flicker, but I saw it. "You're bluffing," he said. "Am I?" He stepped forward. Too close. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No," I said. "I'm ending it." He stared at me for a long time. Like he was trying to figure out if I'd really changed. If the scared girl he used to control was gone for good. She was. And he knew it. So he left. Just like that. But I wasn't done. That night, I sent the voice memo from Rebecca to CPS, along with copies of texts from another cousin, one who said Michael had made her uncomfortable for years but she never said anything because he was just being friendly. I compiled every piece of evidence, every statement, every memory. And then I sent an email to every single member of my family. Subject line: the truth you've all been avoiding. In it, I laid it out. My own story. Rebecca's. The school counselor's concerns. The babysitter's warning. The CPS report. The pattern. I didn't ask for belief. I didn't ask for understanding. I didn't even ask for forgiveness. I asked for one thing. Silence no more. The responses trickled in. Some were furious. How dare you bring this up again? Some were terrified. Do you know what this could do to our name? Some were heartbreakingly honest. I always knew something was off. I'm sorry I never said anything. And one, just one, came from my sister. It was a single sentence. I think I believe you now. Not I'm sorry. Not you were right. But something. It wasn't enough. But it was a crack. And the thing about cracks is, once they're there, the mask can't stay on forever. Michael had hidden behind his smile for decades. But now? Now I was pulling the mask off, inch by inch. And soon, everyone would see what was underneath. There's something ritualistic about denial. It's not just that people ignore the truth, it's that they worship the lie. They build their entire lives around it. Protect it. Feed it. Raise their children inside of it. And they will destroy anyone who tries to take it away. I learned that the hard way in the weeks that followed my family-wide email. Because the moment I spoke the full truth, not just to the authorities, not just to myself, but to them, they didn't crumble. They doubled down. Suddenly, I was the obsessed one. The unstable one. The vindictive one who just couldn't let go of the past. You're traumatizing Jacob all over again, my mother texted. You've turned this into your personal revenge fantasy, my brother-in-law emailed. You always had a flair for the dramatic, my father said on a voicemail I didn't ask for. But I didn't stop. Because behind all that noise, a deeper silence was breaking. One day, Jacob's teacher reached out to my lawyer. Said Jacob had started asking questions in class, quiet, tentative ones, about what happens when someone tells the truth and no one believes them. The teacher didn't know the full story. But she knew a child in pain when she saw one. And Jacob? He was starting to crack too. Because even a child knows when they've been silenced. I remembered what that felt like, the gaslight flickering so long it became the only source of warmth, even as it burned. And I couldn't let that happen to him. So I kept digging. I got a call from Rebecca, my cousin, late one night. I think my mom knew, she said. Back then. When it happened to me. What makes you say that? She walked in once. Not during. But after. I was crying. He left the room fast. She didn't say anything, just closed the door and told me to wash my face. I went cold. Did you tell anyone else? She laughed, bitter. Tell who? My dad? He'd say I was just looking for attention. My grandma? She'd pray the truth away. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just about Michael. It was systemic. A generational fortress of silence built brick by brick. And if I was going to take it down, I needed more than truth. I needed proof. So I went to the one place I hadn't dared, the house. Michael's house. My sister's house. The one Jacob still lived in. I couldn't go in, obviously, there was a no-contact order in place. But I didn't have to. Because I still had access to something they'd all forgotten. The old baby monitor system I helped set up years ago. Back when Jacob was a toddler, they asked for help with home automation. I'd synced a cloud-based camera system to my phone, showed them how to use it, set up multiple feeds. They never revoked my admin access. I logged in. And there he was. Michael. In the living room, watching TV, legs crossed, drink in hand. Jacob, sitting beside him, shoulders tense. I watched the live feed for hours. Most of it was nothing, TV, silence, occasional words too faint to hear. But then, just before midnight, Michael leaned over and touched Jacob's back. Jacob froze. Didn't flinch. Didn't move. Just froze. And then Michael said something I couldn't hear, and Jacob stood up and left the frame. I knew that freeze. I'd lived that freeze. I took screenshots. Timestamped them. Sent them to my lawyer. This is circumstantial, she said. But it's a start. We need more. So I kept watching. Kept documenting. Because secrets might live behind closed doors, but cameras don't lie. And I was done being gaslit. If they wanted to protect their lie, they'd have to do it in court. Because now I had a timeline. I had a witness. I had patterns. And soon, I'd have a case. The fortress was cracking. And I wasn't going to stop swinging until every last stone came down. By the time the subpoena landed in my sister's mailbox, the family chat had already erupted. Apparently, she'd called an emergency meeting, not with CPS, not with a therapist, but with the family. The same collection of people who had spent decades sipping wine and looking the other way while Michael worked the room with his jokes and backpats and far too warm hugs. They didn't need facts. They just needed a villain. And now that I had named the wrong one, they made me into it. The messages started rolling in. You need help. I hope this crusade is worth the destruction. I don't know what happened to you, but this is sick. They closed ranks fast. Like a well-trained militia. Every accusation I made was labeled slander. Every memory I shared was dismissed as a trauma response. Every person who supported me was branded manipulated or naive. But I didn't expect them to side with me. I expected this. Because when someone threatens the family's favorite mask, they don't stop to ask if the person holding it is bleeding underneath. They just scream at them for shattering the illusion. And I wasn't just threatening the mask, I was ripping it off. Piece by piece. Publicly. Because once I realized how much power they got from pretending, I knew I had to make it impossible for them to pretend anymore. So I went public. I published a personal essay, anonymously at first, on a survivor's platform. The title, When Families Bury Abusers and Blame the Ones Who Speak Up. It went viral in 2 days. Over 200,000 reads. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of comments. Stories. Confessions. Echoes of pain I recognized in every line. Then the article reached someone at a local paper, an investigative journalist who reached out quietly, cautiously, asking if I'd be willing to go on record. At first, I said no. I was scared. Still reeling. Still trying to find air in the middle of the smear campaign my own blood was orchestrating. But then I thought of Jacob. And Rebecca. And the cousin who messaged me the week before, whispering, "It happened to me too, but I can't talk about it yet." So I said yes. I gave the reporter everything. The letter from my younger self. The screenshots. The footage. The CPS documents. The timeline. The emails. And when the story dropped, it was no longer anonymous. It had my name on it. Front page. Black and white. Unapologetic. Within hours, my phone was flooded. Some of the family went silent, too scared, too stunned. Others doubled down. My aunt posted a Facebook status about forgiving false accusers. My cousin Sarah shared a meme about how damaged people spread lies. My sister, she called me, I let it go to voicemail. Her message was chilling. You've gone too far. This doesn't just ruin him, it ruins all of us. Exactly. Because maybe that's what had to happen. Maybe the only way to purge a rot so deep is to burn the entire tree. And if I had to be the match? So be it. Later that night, I got another message. Not from my family. From a stranger. A woman in her 50s. It just said, "Thank you. He did it to me too. In the 80s. I never told anyone. Until now." And that's when I knew. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. I wasn't just exposing a man. I was unraveling a legacy. And no matter how many relatives they turned against me, no matter how many lies they spread, they couldn't stop the truth anymore. Because I had the receipts. I had the voice. And I had the fire. They built their silence like a fortress. But I was already inside the gates, it was all there. Buried in plain sight. Emails. Voicemails. Statements. Patterns. Testimonies that stretched back decades, each one ignored, minimized, or explained away with the same tired phrases. He's just affectionate. She's always been dramatic. That's not the kind of man he is. We don't talk about things like that in this family. And that last one? That was the one that kept the monster fed. Because they didn't just miss the signs, they refused to see them. Over and over. And every time they did, a child paid the price. But now, the curtain was gone. The public peace detonated the image they'd worked so hard to maintain. People started asking questions. Real ones. Colleagues. Church friends. Neighbors. How long did you know? Is it true what they're saying about Michael? Why are there so many stories? They couldn't hide anymore. And so they pivoted. Not to the truth, but to strategy. I found out from a source close to the case that my sister had hired a PR consultant. Not a therapist for Jacob. Not a lawyer to support her son. A publicist, to help control the narrative. Michael, of course, denied everything. Gave an exclusive interview to a local outlet that painted him as the victim of a smear campaign by a mentally unstable relative with a grudge. He even cried on camera. Academy Award worthy. But that's the thing about fake tears, they don't hold up against real evidence. And I had it. Every piece. The footage. The timelines. The corroborating stories from cousins, old babysitters, neighbors. The physical posture of a child who flinches when a certain man enters the room. I compiled everything. Not just for the case. But for the public. Because when the systems fail, when families cover up and CPS drags its feet, sometimes you have to take the truth into your own hands. And so I created a site. Password protected. Discreet. For legal eyes only, for now. I called it The Ledger. Not dramatic. Not accusatory. Just accurate. And I laid it all out. Chronological timelines of every reported incident. Witness testimonies, anonymous or verified. Documentation of my own story and those of others. Medical records, redacted but real. Statements from professionals who flagged concerns, and were ignored. I sent the link to the investigating officers. To the CPS director. To the DA's office. To journalists who had previously reported on child abuse cover-ups. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was prosecuting. And then? The turning point. A retired teacher, Jacob's former kindergarten aide, reached out to my lawyer. She'd seen the story. And she had a journal. 5 years ago, she wrote down an incident where Jacob refused to sit next to Michael during a school pickup. He'd started crying. Shaking. Screaming, "Please don't make me go with him." She'd reported it. To the school counselor. Nothing came of it. The counselor was friends with my sister. But now? That journal entry was admissible. It was independent. It was detailed. And it was dated long before I was ever accused. Game. Set. Match. Because now the question wasn't, did something happen? It was, how long have you all known? And the answer? Too damn long. They ignored the evidence because it was inconvenient. They ignored it because it came from women. From children. From people they labeled emotional, unstable, too much. But truth doesn't care how comfortable it makes you. And neither did I anymore. Because this wasn't about me clearing my name. That was done. This was about every victim they left behind when they chose silence over justice. Every child they gaslit. Every woman they discredited. Every wound they buried. But not anymore. The evidence was out. And no PR firm in the world could spin that. It didn't come like I thought it would. No courtroom drama. No handcuffs. No news cameras flashing in the rain. It came in the form of a voicemail. One I didn't expect. One I almost deleted before I even played it. The voice was shaky. Older. Breathing heavy like he'd just climbed stairs. "Hey. It's me. Michael." I froze. He hadn't called me in years. Not since before the accusation. Not since he'd smiled at my mother's house and warned me I was playing a dangerous game. But now? Now he sounded tired. Not guilty. Not sorry. Just cornered. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he started. "But I know it's over." Pause. Heavy. "There's a lot you don't understand. Things that happened to me when I was younger. Not an excuse. Just background." I felt bile rise in my throat. Here it came. The cycle of abuse speech. The attempt to turn himself into a victim. To scrape together sympathy from the very people he'd shattered. But I did things. Things I shouldn't have. With you. With others. I stopped breathing. He said it. He said it. I never meant to hurt anyone. I didn't think. It was that bad. I thought. Another pause. Then, the part that cracked something deep inside me. I remember when you were 10. After. You stopped talking to me for a year. I always wondered if you remembered. Guess you did. I dropped to the floor. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't ready. Because I'd spent so long trying to convince people it was real, that I was real, that I hadn't prepared myself for what it would feel like to hear him admit it. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like collapse. A long, long collapse that started in my chest and echoed all the way back to my childhood. He kept talking. Said he was thinking about going away for a while. Said he didn't blame me. Said, I hope someday you can forgive me, even if I don't deserve it. Then he hung up. No apology. Just a trail of broken words that were too little, too late. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. She said it was enough. Enough to take it to the DA. Enough to submit for charges. Enough to end this. But I still sat in that silence for a long time. Not because I doubted it. But because some part of me, the part that used to blame myself, needed to hear him say it before I could finally let go. He did it. He hurt me. He hurt others. He hurt Jacob. And now? Now the whole world knew. CPS reopened the case. Not just mine. Rebecca's. Jacob's. Others, still unnamed. My sister went dark. Deleted her social media. Changed her number. My father? Still defending him. He's sick. He needs help, not punishment. And my mother? She came to my door one morning. No warning. No call. Just her, holding a box of photos. Our family. Before. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I didn't invite her in. She didn't ask to be. She handed me the box and said, I believe you now. I just don't know what to do with it. I told her the truth. You live with it. Like I did. Like we all did. But now you don't get to look away anymore. She nodded. That was it. Not closure. Not healing. Just acknowledgement. And that was more than I ever expected. Because the confession wasn't about redemption. It was about consequences. He said it. And now? Now he'd face it. There's a difference between justice and vengeance. Justice is supposed to be quiet, orderly, cold, legal. But what I felt. What I delivered. That was fire. That was reckoning. That was the roar of truth finally unstopped after a lifetime of being silenced. Michael was arrested 2 weeks after the voicemail. Indicted on multiple counts of child sexual abuse, spanning over 3 decades. Not just me. Not just Jacob. Others. So many others. And when the charges became public, when the media picked up the story, the entire family watched their name unravel like a cheap suit thread. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It was a funeral. The funeral of their denial. Their silence. Their legacy. And I made sure they were front row. I didn't have to testify. The confession alone would have sufficed. But I chose to. Not because the prosecution needed me, but because I needed them to see me. All of them. My mother. My father. My sister. The cousins who whispered about me in DMs but said nothing publicly. The aunts and uncles who posted prayers instead of apologies. I walked into that courtroom not as the accused. Not as the scapegoat. But as the truth incarnate. I took the stand and told my story, clearly, calmly, without tears. Not because I wasn't feeling anything. But because I had felt it all already. I described what happened when I was 10. What happened when Jacob came to me and couldn't say it, but showed it. How the family closed ranks the moment I pointed toward the rot. How they chose comfort over conscience. How they tried to destroy me to save a man they knew was capable of the worst. I watched their faces as I spoke. Some turned away. Some cried. Some just stared, hollow, stunned, unraveling. Good. Because this wasn't just about punishing him. This was about exposing them. I ended with this. I didn't burn this family down. I just stopped holding the matches they handed me every year and pretending they weren't already on fire. The room was silent. Even Michael didn't look at me. Coward. He took a plea deal shortly after. 20 years. Maybe more, depending on additional testimonies. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. Jacob's custody was transferred to his aunt on his father's side, a woman who'd spoken up on my behalf, quietly at first, then fiercely when she saw the evidence. I saw him once after the sentencing. Supervised visit. A park bench. A safe distance. He was taller now. Still guarded. But his eyes were different. Not wide with fear. Wide with awareness. He sat beside me and asked, "Is it really over?" I told him the truth. It's never really over. But it's not yours to carry anymore. He nodded, didn't smile. But didn't flinch either. That was enough. Now, when people ask me what happened to my family, I say this. They protected a monster. I chose to protect the truth. And when they say, "That must have been so hard," I say, it was harder being quiet. I don't regret it. Not the cost. Not the chaos. Not the fire. Because in the end, I got what I wanted. Not just to be believed. But to make every single one of them watch. Watch the empire of lies collapse. Watch their golden boy cuffed and led away. Watch the scapegoat become the storm. And from those ashes, I built something better. Not a family. A future. One without masks. One without monsters. One where no child has to whisper a secret and pray someone listens. I listened. And now the world is, too.